Let me begin with a simple question. What if the same person who accused you also sat in judgment over your appeal? Would you call that justice or would you call that pre decided? This is not a hypothetical situation. This is exactly what happened in a recent judgment of the Rajasthan High Court in Messrs. Ramji Lal Mohan Lal versus Union of India and others. The story: a taxpayer was subjected to a search and inspection under GST law. The authorization for that search was issued by a senior officer. Following the search, a show cause notice was issued. An adjudication order was passed. The taxpayer filed an appeal. So far, everything appears routine. But here is the twist. The same officer who authorized the search later sat as the appellate authority and decided the appeal arising from that very search. Pause for a moment and reflect on that. The person who triggered the proceedings became the judge of whether those proceedings were valid. The core legal issue: the situation strikes at the heart of one of the oldest principles of law. Nemo judex in causa sua. No one should be a judge in his own case. This is not just Latin. This is the backbone of natural justice. Because justice is not just about correctness, it is about fairness, neutrality, and public confidence. What did the court say? The Rajasthan High Court did something very important. It did not go into the merits of tax liability. It did not examine whether the demand was right or wrong. Instead, it focused on a single foundational issue. Can the same officer act in dual roles, first as an investigator and then as an appellate judge? The answer was clear: no. The court held that such dual exercise of power creates inherent bias. It violates the principles of institutional impartiality. It offends the doctrine of natural justice, and therefore the appellate order was quashed. The matter was remanded to a different authority. Why is this important? Because bias is not always about actual prejudice, it is about reasonable likelihood of bias. Let me explain. Even if the officer was completely fair, even if he acted with total honesty, the appearance of bias is enough to invalidate the decision. Why? Because justice must not only be done, it must also be seen to be done. Understanding bias: in simple terms, bias can take many forms: personal bias due to relationships, pecuniary bias due to financial interest, subject matter bias, prior involvement in the same matter. This case falls into the third category. When an officer initiates proceedings, forms an opinion, then later sits in appeal over the same matter, he is in effect reviewing his own decision making process, and human nature does not easily allow us to say, I was wrong. Real world application. Now let's bring this closer to practice. In GST and taxation, this principle has huge implications. Officers often wear multiple hats. Administrative and quasi judicial roles overlap. Appeals are sometimes handled within the same hierarchy. This judgment sends a strong message. Functional separation matters. Procedural fairness is not optional. Even technical violations of natural justice can invalidate proceedings. Key takeaways for professionals. If you are a practitioner, remember this. Always examine who passed the order, not just what the order says. Look for prior involvement of the same officer, role overlap, investigator plus adjudicator plus appellate authority. Raise objections early and clearly. Natural justice is not a formality, it is a powerful ground of challenge. A larger reflection. This case is not just about GST, it is about the philosophy of justice. In a system where the executive investigates, the same system adjudicates and sometimes reviews itself, the risk of bias is not theoretical, it is structural. And that is why courts step in, not to correct outcomes, but to correct processes. Let me end with this thought. A fair system is not one where decisions are always right. A fair system is one where people trust the process, because when people lose faith in fairness, even correct decisions begin to feel unjust. This judgment reminds us that power must be exercised with restraint, authority must be separated from adjudication, and above all, justice must remain uncontaminated by bias. Because the moment a judge becomes a participant, justice loses its soul. Thank you.